Good evening, and thank you to everyone who has joined us tonight at the East Midlands-led Fair Pay for Nursing virtual rally. I really appreciate you taking your time out your day to join us on what I think will be a really good informative event for you, the members. Tonight we have a great lineup of speakers from different backgrounds to share their knowledge and experience and to talk about the importance of supporting and pushing forward our Fair Pay for Nursing campaign. But firstly, I want to briefly talk about where we're up to, what we've been told so far. On July 21st, the nation heard this government announce a 3% pay award it intends to impose on staff within the NHS. Despite the RCN and other unions demanding more, despite NHS staff demanding more, this government chose to ignore our voice. Instead, 3% is yet another real per term pay cut we have to face with inflation set to rise to 3.7%. When Sajid Javid announced this, he said, and I quote, "What matters most is my NHS colleagues is that they are able to give their patients the best possible care. That's what makes them so incredible." The reality is, and I speak from experience, every day we are battling tooth and nail to keep our patients safe, and in some cases we fail. It is nearing impossible to provide safe and effective and harm-free care with the chronic staffing shortages we face day in, day out. And to me, that is what this campaign is about, keeping our patients safe. If this government refused to put patients at the forefront of their decision-making, we have a duty of care to stand and to fight. We have a duty of care to tell this government that 3% is not enough, and that is not what our membership demanded. But this isn't just about patient safety. What about staff safety? Our own physical and mental health is pushed to the limits, and we must be able to look after our own and our families. How can we do this effectively when some nurses must use food banks to feed themselves and their families? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that cutting nurses' pay just ever increases the shortages and the problems we face day to day. I don't think NHS nurses and healthcare feel the same way and feel incredible when we have this to face. So what have we done so far? We've seen thousands of protests across the country following this announcement to show this government that enough is enough, and we are ready to fight for us and our patients. And this week, the RCN have announced the date of their consultative ballot, due to commence on Thursday, the 12th of August. This is the time where we ask you, the membership, do you accept or reject this government's pay award? And I personally ask you to consider reject. You as the membership demanded 12.5%, and this falls far short of that. We need to continue this fight, and we need to continue to be active and engaged with your regions and your local reps. But most of all, please speak to every member you know to ensure their details are up to date via My RCN. And that extends to all members in all unions. All unions need their ballots returned. Without them, we cannot send the information that you need, and we need the balance to return to move forward. Enough of my rambling now. I'll finish here with a quick reminder to ask you all joining us tonight. Remember to comment your thoughts and any questions you have in the chat box. After the speakers, we'll have a quick question and answer session, so feel free to ask anything of the panel. We won't necessarily have time to answer all of your questions, so if you do have any further questions, please contact your regional office, your council member or your local representatives. I'll introduce our first speaker of the evening. Zarah is a Labour MP for Coventry South, and she's continued to show fantastic public support for NHS workers and the pay campaign. I've had the pleasure of seeing her speak before, and I'm excited to have that opportunity once again. Thank you, Zarah, for joining us tonight, and I'll hand over to you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Zarah Sultana. I'm the Labour Member of Parliament for Coventry South, and I'm so pleased to be with you all today. And I want to thank RCN Midlands for inviting me on this really important call. It's an absolute privilege to speak alongside our amazing NHS nurses, and I just want to begin by saying very loud and clear that you have my unconditional, absolute support in fighting for a proper pay rise. And that's not 1%, it's not 3%, which is an insulting offer that won't even outstrip inflation. A proper pay deal has to be at least 4 or 5 times more than that. A deal like that, 12.5% or 15% or more, would make up for a decade of falling pay and come closer to recognising the value of the work that you guys do day in, day out. And it's not like the government can't find the money when it wants to. They seem to find £37 billion for the privatised test and trace system. And earlier this year, they found an extra £16 billion for the military. And they find billions and billions of pounds for dodgy contracts handed to their mates and donors all the time. A proper pay rise for you would cost a fraction of those figures, yet because you're not mates with Boris Johnson and because you haven't handed a cheque to the Tories, the government refuses to find money to pay you for the work that you do. While Tory donors have been getting rich off this pandemic, it's been you guys getting us through it. On the front lines, you've been truly incredible, battling the virus, working overtime, enduring stress and trauma, even when you haven't been provided with the proper PPE to do it safely. And now more than 1,000 health and social care staff are estimated to have died from the disease. Nearly half of intensive care staff report symptoms of PTSD, severe depression, or anxiety. And all of this after a decade of NHS staff being overworked and underpaid. Here in the Midlands, we have nursing vacancies alone standing at 7,500 and paid down as much as 30% for some staff. 2 in 3 nurses have had to work overtime to pay the bills according to recent research. And for you guys, you know this because this is the reality that so many of you are living. There are reports also of nurses having to rely on food banks, and these are far from uncommon. Tory ministers have called you guys heroes. They clapped for you while the cameras were watching, but now they think they can get away with this insulting pay deal. It's absolutely shameful. And while you guys are overstretched and undervalued, we know that our NHS itself is under grave threat. Last month, the Conservatives brought forward a new NHS bill to Parliament. They say that they're reforming the NHS, but it's just a euphemism for what they're really doing. They're breaking it apart, bit by bit, privatising the NHS by stealth. Since coming into power in 2010, more than £96 billion has gone to non-public healthcare providers. Now, nearly 20% of NHS healthcare bids go to private providers. And if this new bill becomes law, it will only get worse. This bill will put private companies on healthcare boards, and it will give them a say over our care and our public funds. Everything that we've seen with the cronyism, this bill will put that on steroids, removing even the need for competitive tendering for contracts. And it will implement a healthcare model that incentivizes cuts and closures, rationing funding to health boards. I voted against it in Parliament, but it passed because the Tories have a huge majority, but the fight is far from over. It will be debated in further stages and voted again in Parliament. We know that our NHS is our most precious institution. It's what makes us so proud of this country. You guys, our doctors, our nurses, our porters, our cleaners are our most vital key workers. And it was said that the great Labour politician Nye Bevan, who helped found the NHS in 1948, once remarked that the NHS will last as long as there are folks left with the faith to fight for it. I have that faith, and I promise you this, I will keep fighting for our NHS. I will fight for you to get a proper pay rise. And if you vote against this pay deal and take industrial action, I will be backing you every step of the way. Thank you so much for inviting me and solidarity.
Thank you, Zarah, for coming to speak tonight. I really appreciate your time. And actually, I think you make some really valid points. One of the biggest questions I always get is, how are we going to be able to afford this? And I think you've covered that perfectly. So I really, really do appreciate your time. Thank you. The next speaker we have tonight is Matt Tacey. I had the pleasure of meeting Matt about a year ago now through this campaigning, and I can now call him a really good friend. Matt is a psychiatric nurse and an RCN activist, and he's joined us tonight to share his own perspective. Take it away, Matt.
Thank you very, very much, Mel. Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Lovely introduction, and I feel very, very lucky and privileged to be a part of such a fantastic panel of speakers. So, as Mel said, I am a psychiatric nurse, so I felt it would be appropriate for me to speak about some of my experiences throughout working within the National Health Service, and some of the experiences that I've witnessed as well. So I started working in the National Health Service at the age of 18, and I sort of fell into it by accident. But I absolutely loved caring for those in need, and I was completely overwhelmed of the satisfaction after each shift. And even at the age of, tender age of 18, and I knew this was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, 13 years later, as in today, the current working conditions in the National Health Service does not remind me of the profession I once fell in love with. And this is for a number of reasons. This is pay cuts, this is pay freezes, it's service closures, there's the chronic short staffing, as Mel mentioned. It's the cut to resources and funding that makes this difficult job even more difficult. I often describe, this job as trying to treat patients with one hand tied behind your back. And that hand being tied behind your back is being restrained by this current government. And as caring professionals, we take that home with us. We take home the fact we cannot provide the care for our patients because we're constantly rationing the current limited resources we have. That's not what the NHS was built upon. That's not what it was built for, and that's not what it stands for. We know poor pay reflects and impacts on recruitment and retention of our staff. Short staffing delays assessments. Delaying assessments delays diagnosis. Delaying diagnosis means a delay in treatment. And a delay in treatment impacts negatively on prognosis. And once again, as caring professionals, we take that home with us. Post-traumatic stress disorders come up quite a lot over the past sort of 18 months. We've witnessed some things that we shouldn't have. We were not prepared for what COVID had in store for us. We've had staff being moved at very short notice from wards to support with ICU and COVID wards. We've had those that didn't have the experience or knowledge or skills just whipped away to fill in. We knew that was necessary, but we were completely unprepared for what to expect. There is one experience that I'll never forget, and as healthcare workers, as nurses, we all have these experiences or moments during our careers, and they can be, both good experiences, but also very difficult experiences. And this one was something that I will live with and I will remember for the rest of my life. And it was a part of my role sometimes is to triage referrals from GP practices to our local, one of the CMHTs I cover, community mental health team. This particular referral was very close to home. As I read the referral, it didn't alarm me at first. It was a lady that currently felt suicidal, increased alcohol consumption. She was off work due to sickness and experiencing PTSD type symptoms, and that didn't alarm me at first. So unfortunately, these referrals are quite common. It was the next line that hit me, that really hit me and took my breath away. And it said, occupation, nurse. And that, as I mentioned, that really took my breath away. And I did actually cry. This lady had been on an ICU ward and witnessed harrowing things, and psychologically, she was paying the price for that. And I could empathise with that, because my wife is a nurse, my mum is a nurse, my dad was a nurse, my grandma was a nurse. So it really hit home. And now we will all know somebody in this position. This isn't an isolated incident. There will be tens of thousands of our colleagues experiencing some level of trauma. So as mentioned, some of us will have long-lasting effects, whether it be physical due to long COVID, whether it be psychological with anxiety, depression or PTSD, and in some really devastating circumstances, we've lost approximately just over 1,000 colleagues. And if now, after all that I've just mentioned, considering what we sacrificed, and if it doesn't justify an above inflation, a meaningful or a restorative pay rise, when will it ever be? So I urge you all, when the ballot next week, when the ballot opens, and I encourage you all to use your vote, ensure your voice is heard, engage and encourage others to vote, speak to colleagues. It's more important now than ever. But you fight for yourself, you fight for your colleagues, and you fight for your patients. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our colleagues, but most importantly, we owe it to the country. We owe it to the users of our services. Our patients deserve better. And I urge you all to become active in the RCN. Speak to reps, speak to your local branch. Being active within your union is absolutely amazing. From my experience, it's amazing. You meet some fantastic people who share the same vision, goals, and values of yourself, and that is just incredibly powerful. So I'll finish on this. Let's stand together, let's unite, and let's change nursing for the better. Let's ensure nursing is valued, is respected, and is cherished. Thank you once again for having me tonight, and I'm sure I'll meet a lot of you in person rather than via Teams. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt, for joining the panel tonight. And I have to say, every time I hear you speak, it is an emotional roller coaster. And yeah, again, you got me. Those personal experiences really are absolutely harrowing. And to hear what colleagues go through, what our colleagues go through. And you say patients deserve better. I wholeheartedly agree. But do you know what? Our staff deserve better. We deserve better than what this government is doing to us at the moment. And that's what this fight is about. So really, thank you for that. So our next speaker tonight is Cecil Gomez. She's a student nurse and South East Committee member, and I'm really happy to have a different part of our membership being represented tonight. Students are the future of the NHS and of healthcare. They are our future, and it's vital for them to have that voice in the future. Cecil's one of these already with a very strong voice and is helping to lead the way. But first, we're going to play you a short but very powerful video that the South East Student Ambassadors created as part of the pay campaign, and then Cecil will come on and give you her perspective.
Look me in the eye. I walk a mile in my patient's shoes every single day. What is my worth?
Look me in the eye. I look after your loved ones every day. What's my worth?
Look me in the eye. I have cared for your loved ones in their final hours. What's my worth?
Look me in the eye. I work 2 jobs alongside my training every week to make sure that I can afford to qualify and look after your relatives. What is my worth?
Look me in the eye. Today, I held the hand of your loved one when they were alone and they were anxious, and I promise you that I did everything in that moment to reassure them. What's my worth?
Look me in the eye. I hold dying patients' hands when no one else can, so they're not alone. What's my worth?
Look me in the eye. I'm taught to be there when you need me the most. What's that worth?
I'm scared I'm going to lose everything I worked for.
I'm scared for the sick. It is important they have the best.
I'm scared that I'm going to miss out on learning opportunities because I can see how overstretched and understaffed our nurses are, and I just want to help them.
I'm scared that I'm going to burn out before I even qualify.
I fear how I will maintain this compassion throughout my nursing career.
I'm scared that I won't be able to progress my career in the way that I would like to because I won't be able to afford to go back to university.
I fear I won't be able to pay my bills even after I qualify.
Hello, my name is Cecil and I'm a future nurse.
Hello, my name is Beth and I am a future nurse.
Hello, my name's Alicia and I'm a future nurse.
My name is Kerry and I am a future nurse.
My name is Liberty and I am a future nurse.
Hello, my name is John and I am a future nurse.
Hello, my name's Chloe and I'm a future nurse.
Hi, like mentioned in the video, I'm Cecil, I'm the South East Student Committee member, and thank you for all those who are attending. I wanted to start by playing this video because I wanted you to hear from the many student nurses and some of our newly registered nurses in this video now. What we felt when we heard about the pay rise. I didn't even have to ask as a committee member, wanting to represent their voice. It was the first time I saw all of us come together and just want someone to hear what we were feeling. I'm soon approaching my third and my final year of my nursing degree. That is me soon approaching £27,750. I'll say that again, £27,750 of debt before even starting to work. Funding and disparities related to funding is a story for another day. With the rising inflation, with all my dreams and ambitions, with plans to one day have a family, I'm actually already put off by the thought of having a life outside of nursing, because I see how overstretched and overworked our nurses are. I already feel the pressure when I say, I've always wanted to be a nurse, because I worry a comment like, you won't say that once you're in 2 years. Is 2 years really enough to make me forget my passion and love for nursing? Is 2 years enough to drown all the struggles and achievements from my 3 years as a student? Is it really just 2 years till I'm about to deal with compassion fatigue and burnout? There's a saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, guess what? I love what I do, but I dread that feeling every morning when I have to go into placement, knowing well that even though I'm not counted in the numbers, there's going to be at least one person sick. Not for fault of their own, but due to the decisions that people make, due to people having no idea what it is to walk a mile in the nurse's shoes. I've had strangers come to me and say, how are you going to study? Or how are you going to learn? How are you going to make up your hours when you don't have enough nurses? When you don't have nurses have enough time to have their lunch, to go to the toilet or have a sip of water? Fair pay for nurses will mean that your future nurse is not on the verge of burnout, even before qualifying. Fair pay for nurses will mean that your future nurses have lots of opportunities to learn, to have practice assessors and supervisors that will love having us, because we won't just be another list added. It will mean that we have enough nurses on shift, and it will mean lowered retention rates. It will ultimately mean our patients receive the best care they deserve. That's why I really urge you, even as student members, if you have an NHS contract, you can vote, accept or reject. Please do vote.
Thank you, Cecil, for joining the panel tonight. And I mean, I said we want to hear it from a different perspective, and I think we have. Hearing it from somebody, who's so worried about, like you say, compassion burnout before you haven't even started your qualified career yet. And this is yet another reason. It's not just about our current qualified nurses, it's about the future of our nurses as well. So thank you for that. So next we have Kelly Hitchcock joining us. So Kelly is a CPN and she's also the branch chair in Derbyshire. Kelly has been doing some fantastic work in the East Midlands, and she's honestly a really fantastic and active rep. So I will hand over to you, Kelly.
Hello, my name's Kelly Hitchcock. I'm a CPN in Derby City. I was going to talk to you today about the impact of COVID and nursing through the last 18 months. I was going to talk about being a mental health nurse, about patients with severe and enduring mental illnesses whose care could not be put on the back burner whilst we reacted to a global pandemic. about patients whose entire support, their social care and activities disappeared overnight with serious consequences, leaving health services to pick up the pieces. About a huge rise in demand from already overstretched mental health services, from a population struggling to cope with the impact of lockdown and furlough and job losses and deaths. I was also going to talk about being a community nurse, about watching other members of the MDT being advised to work from home for their own safety, while nurses were told that we would need to continue with face-to-face care. About visiting households where every member of the family had tested positive for COVID, about only having a disposable apron and mask for protection in an environment where every surface and the air itself was contaminated, and then coming out and getting into my own car and driving home to my family knowing that I was putting myself and my children at risk from a deadly virus. But then I found this. I'd just like to read a little. I have just finished yet another week working in a short-staffed team, with 4 nurses on long-term sick, 3 on sickness leave, 1 on annual leave, and 2 unfilled posts. Our team of 14 nurses finds itself reduced to just 4. This would be hard to deal with if it were the exception to the rule, but it has been more than a year since we were fully staffed. It's the impact of chronic short staffing that's on my mind, the constant firefighting, the only ever being able to deal with the most immediate problem, the never being able to talk to patients properly, listen to them, and to maybe prevent a crisis instead of merely reacting to one. I wrote that for the Derbyshire Branch newsletter in December 2019, before COVID, when I had no idea what was about to unfold. And in some ways, nothing has changed. We are still short-staffed, we are still undervalued, and we are still underpaid. But one thing has changed. COVID has highlighted the essential role of nurses, the life-saving work that we do every day. COVID has presented us with an opportunity. We've taken pay freezes and below inflation pay rises for years. We've tried to do more with less for years. What nursing needs now is a significant investment to solve that short staffing and to protect patients. Now, of course, Rishi Sunak will say there's no money. After paying for furlough and additional business support and the uplift in universal credit, there's no money left. His pot is empty. Of course, he will still find some money for HS2 and a new Britannia and to paint the tail of a plane in the colours of the Union Jack. And Sajid Javid, well, he'll say there are record numbers of students beginning nursing courses this year. There is no problem, but it takes 3 years to train a nurse. Many of those will not complete their course or ever join the register. And of those that do go on to join the nursing workforce, many more will leave whilst they are still newly qualified due to the pressures of the job. That's not even to mention the experienced nurses who are now leaving in record numbers. And Boris Johnson, well, he'll say that we are heroes and we do have a George Cross to prove it. But I do not want a medal. I've had enough of his claps and I've had enough of his claptrap. A pay rise is not a reward for working through the pandemic. It is a fair remuneration for the level of highly skilled expertise. It is a fair remuneration for the level of responsibility and autonomous decision making. It is an acknowledgement of nursing as a profession which will attract future nurses and retain the experience and expertise of the existing workforce. So here's my final thought, and this one might surprise you. I don't want to strike. I also suspect that the majority of nurses feel the same, but I am prepared to. I'm prepared to take action as far as I need to, and not because I am greedy and not because I am self-serving. unlike some people I could mention. It's because I see that the NHS is at breaking point, that waiting times are longer, that bed numbers are reduced, that services are stretched, and enough is enough. Somebody has to say stop, no more. And as a nurse, I see that as my job, my responsibility. I will fight for my patients, I will fight for our NHS, and I call on you to join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for that amazing speech. And I think you make a couple of good points. It's not just about pay here. You know, we've got to fight for our own safety. PPE was a fantastic point. And equally, the whole idea of strike, I've had a lot of staff saying, I don't want to strike. And I don't want to either. And Kelly makes an absolutely clear point. We don't want to, but if we have to, because this government forces to, we will do. And that's for another conversation, but they need to know that we're prepared to do so. So we're near enough halfway through our speakers now, and I think we've had some amazing speeches so far, but we've got some more to come. So I'll introduce the next one, and our next speaker is Matt Hull. He's an infection prevention and control nurse, and he's also an RCN safety rep, and I'll leave it to him to share his thoughts. Thanks, Matt.
Hi, my name's Matt Hull. I'm one of the infection prevention nurses and health and safety representatives for the University Hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust. I'm here to speak about the pay offer. I'm really quite dismayed at the pay offer given by the government to the nursing profession. I feel undervalued, a job I truly love. I feel the government must reward and invest in our profession and the NHS. On a personal note, my wife, a nurse of 22 years, left pre-COVID due to the stress of the job and considered rejoining, but now not due to the disgraceful pay offer by the government. My daughter also considered joining the profession, but now, unfortunately, she has decided not to due to she can see the stress that her parents have been put under and themselves through much stress in difficult and traumatic circumstances during the pandemic. I, as a health and safety representative and infection prevention nurse, helped support them during these times in their roles, completing PPE checks, mass fit testing, helping support them on the wards during outbreaks of patients with COVID and staff. I could see the pressure people were under from all of the teams, and the 3% pay offer seems little reward for the sacrifices the nurses have made. I worry for the future of the NHS. If it's to continue like this, I can see a mass exodus of nursing staff from the profession. When will the ministers in government come and speak to the nurses so that they can personally talk to them about their experiences of the pandemic and the continued stress that they are being put under? Politicians have little understanding of our role, I feel. After all the clapping during the pandemic, now is the time to truly reward nursing and to continue to support the NHS. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Matt, for that. And do you know what? It's really sad to hear that, you know, obviously your family members, but potential future employees of the NHS chose not to join because of what they're seeing us go through. And I think that's another key point to make, is that this campaign isn't just about fair pay, good wages, pennies in the pocket. It's actually about effective recruitment and retention, because we have to remember that fair pay comes hand in hand with safer staffing that saves lives. So it's really important to remember that. I'll just say that we're about halfway through now, so a reminder to everybody viewing, if you do have any questions, comments, anything you want to ask, please remember to utilise that chat box, and at the end we'll answer as many questions that we can. So next I'm going to introduce Fiona Devlin onto the panel to come and share her thoughts. She's the Northern Ireland Council member, and she's had some previous experience of not only going through a pay campaign but also actually striking successfully in Northern Ireland a couple of years back. But first we're going to show a short film of some of those actions and what it was like on the RCN Northern Ireland industrial action that was in 2019-2020, and following that Fiona will talk.
On the 29th of July 2019, the Royal College of Nursing Northern Ireland Board took the historic decision to ballot members working in health and social care services on taking industrial action and strike action over the nurse staffing crisis in Northern Ireland. This came at a time when there were 2,600 unfilled nursing posts across the system and a similar level of vacancies in nursing homes. Meanwhile, nurses' pay was continuing to fall behind England, Scotland and Wales, with the real value of nurses' pay in Northern Ireland having fallen by 15% over the last 8 years, and the cost of securing nursing staff via agencies having increased to an all-time high. These factors were having a direct impact upon the health and well-being of the people of Northern Ireland and the health and well-being of nursing staff. With long waiting lists and waiting times, difficulties in accessing services, and nurses so overstretched that they were simply unable to provide the level of care to patients and their families that they want to provide. The ballot was launched on the 9th of October, and members were given 4 weeks to decide what they wanted to do. On the 7th of November, it was announced that members had voted overwhelmingly to take industrial action and strike action. This was the first time in the 103-year history of the Royal College of Nursing that this had happened. 96% of members who returned their ballot papers voted to take industrial action, and 92% voted to take strike action. For the first time in the history of the organisation, members of the Royal College of Nursing held their first day of strike action on Wednesday the 18th of December 2019.
Vocal and on the streets, but these workers would prefer to be inside, taking care of patients. These placards have a clear message. They want better pay and better conditions.
We don't do this lightly. It's the first time we've ever striked in 103 years, but I'm here because I think it's important that care is delivered to our patients in Northern Ireland.
Patient safety is being impacted. Our waiting lists for consultant appointments is off the scales compared to the rest of the UK. So we know that striking is our last resort, but we do believe that it's finally given nurses their voice back.
Iona McCormack normally starts Wednesdays on the wards. Instead, for the first time in 39 years, she's joining friends on the picket because she believes the situation is dire.
Nursing staff on the ward are telling us it's not safe. Nurses are taking on extended roles, giving patients diagnosis and in some cases even carrying out surgery.
On the 8th of January, nurses were forced to take their second day of strike action. This time, RCN members took action by themselves.
Should never have come to this. Nurses that you see on this picket line today and throughout, and the Royal College of Nursing has been informing and advising both formally and in every other way politicians and decision makers of this crisis for many, many years. All a matter of record. We've told them, if you don't do something about this, if you don't waken up and see what's happening here, our health service is on a precipice. But I honestly, truly believe that nurses will continue to work and do the best thing for patients, and their voice will be heard.
A third day of strike action followed on the 10th of January.
This is our third day now on strike. So I suppose we came here today with a lot of optimism and hope that our 5 political leaders will show the leadership and the bravery and the commitment that they need to sign up to this deal and get Stormont back and sort out this pay and save staffing levels and all of that. And it's about them showing the leadership and the commitment and the that we have shown by coming out here in the picket lines. So it was very mixed emotions. It's not where we want to be. We want to be back in work. So this was not an easy decision, but we just felt that we had to do it.
Finally, on Saturday the 11th of January, the Northern Ireland Assembly was restored and a new Executive and Health Minister installed. This gave nurses fresh hope that an agreement could be reached. However, it wasn't until the 16th of January that the RCN was in a position to suspend strike action pending consultation with RCN members, and the detailed framework document received from the Minister being put before the RCN's UK Council. Following over 3 weeks of consultation with members, the ballot result returned with a verdict to accept the proposals to restore pay parity with England and to accept the safe staffing framework, which includes a commitment to implementation of safe staffing legislation. Safe staffing was the central part of the RCN's dispute, and for the sake of those who use the service and those who work in it, we must get this right. Until these measures are implemented in full, the RCN remains in dispute with the Department of Health and employers. However, the movement towards a better and more sustainable health and social care service and the progress that has been made is because the voice of nursing not just spoke up, but was heard. Taking industrial action and going on strike was an extremely difficult decision for nurses, but shows that when we stand together, we can bring about real change for the better.
Good evening. My name is Fiona Devlin, RCN Northern Ireland Board Chair and Council Member. The overall action in Northern Ireland was successful due to a mixture of different factors, including the social. The outcome was a result of careful planning over several years to build momentum and support, considerable activity and successful tactics used during the balloting and action stages. This was the result of strong partnership working between RCN board, staff, elected members and all involved here and across the UK to ensure the action was to be successful. It is sad to think that nurses should ever need to stand on picket lines to secure pay parity and safe staffing. However, for RCN Northern Ireland, we had exhausted all other avenues of dialogue with the Department of Health and were left with no other choice but to strike. The first industrial action and strike in the 103-year history of the RCN. When we took industrial action and strike, our members were worse off than they were 10 years ago. We saw our pay fall behind inflation and fall behind our colleagues, you and the rest of the UK. We had thousands of vacancies in health and social care trusts with the same number in the independent sector. It was not an easy thing to do, either from the logistics of organising or from the sense of professional responsibility towards patients. But it was this sense of responsibility toward patients that meant members knew we had to take the ultimate action with a ballot turnout of 43.3%, 95% of our members voting for strike and 91% of our members voting for industrial action. While our action was well organised and provides positive proof that success is possible. We were only too aware that success cannot be guaranteed regardless of the approaches taken. We knew that while some risks can be avoided, others cannot be mitigated, meaning that with all the planning in place, action may be unsuccessful due to external factors. We were only too aware that with our action, reputations and relationships could potentially be damaged with the public, employers and other stakeholders. This is arguably even more pertinent in a stressed health and care service today in the context of COVID-19. But there is a lot of what Northern Ireland did that can be replicated elsewhere across the RCN. Do not underestimate the amount of time it takes to prepare for industrial action and to build support among members and the public, but it is possible to do. Our action was about intense engagement, education and empowerment of our members through multiple approaches across a variety of channels and in turn with the public and other stakeholders. Communication was vital from the outset. It was consistent, concise and succinct throughout each stage of the process. It was a drip feed effect. Messaging was targeted with the same thread run through. We always linked pay and safe staffing in every piece of communication or interview. Media training for all involved was essential. Good governance was vitally important to enable active, timely and responsive decision making tailored to the specific context and to ensure everyone understood their role at each level. All our action was based on member input with clear legal advice throughout. This was about the TUC and the PNC arms of the college working at its best, as pay and safe staffing are inextricably linked. We established links with anyone that could potentially help us both within our organisation and outside. We learned a lot from the INMO, the Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisation, and replicated a lot from them in the way of derogations, which were the bedrock of our safe action to mitigate any potential impact on patient safety and experience. We ensured that member and staff concern and feedback were taken into consideration from the outset. We had manned helplines in operation over the whole period of industrial action and strike and set up a framework for bronze, silver and gold command made up of elected members at every level, with each level had a distinct role and remit. This was vital, with 2 early reporting mechanisms on each day's activity of industrial action and strike, constantly reviewing action, problem solving and debriefing at the end of each day in prep for the next. To conclude, this was a long and hard road of activity. This challenged us all, our emotions as healthcare professionals. It challenged all involved in their moral, ethical and professional thinking in relation to patient care and potential to cause harm. However, we knew that it was right to take industrial action and strike at that point, as all other avenues of approach had failed, and we were there to advocate for safe and effective patient care, and to do that you need a safety critical workforce to provide it. As a member, as an RCN member, as a registrant and as the board chair for Northern Ireland, I was proud of what we, the RCN, achieved together for patient care and for the future of nursing here. We took industrial action and strike. We did it safely and professionally for the people of Northern Ireland, for the patients now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona, for that. That's really fantastic. And it's so great, like you were saying, it's so great to see that actually, do you know what? It does work. If we end up in a position where strike action is what is our last resort, and that's what the membership demands, that we know that it can work. And I hear members' concerns and worries about it. I really do, and I share some of those. But it's really good to hear from somebody who has that experience. So thank you so much for joining us. So our next speaker that we've got tonight is Louise Regan. So Louise is not part of the RCN. She is from another union though. She's from the National Education Union. She's one of the national officer for that union, and she's just come to talk with an external perspective really about, you know, what it is to campaign and what it is to take action. And I think, again, any experience that she can share is really vital and really important for us all to hear. So thank you for joining us tonight, Louise, and I'll hand over to you.
No problem. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you to all the previous speakers. It's been extremely powerful listening to them actually. And for people that don't know, I was actually a nurse before I was a teacher. So I was a nurse at the General Hospital in Nottingham before I became a teacher and joined what was then the National Union of Teachers, but now is the National Education Union. And I just want to say, really, I think, you know, it's interesting listening to all of the speeches. There's lots of comparisons between what is happening in the nursing profession and what is happening in the education profession. You know, we see exactly the same sort of attacks on us. We see that those pay awards that are actually pay cuts have a massive impact on not only our recruitment, but also our retention. But also certainly over the last couple of years, the impact of workload and stress on our members has seen lots and lots of people leaving the profession in the same way that I'm hearing is happening for the nursing profession. And I have to say, you know, from my union to yours, we applaud all of you for the work that you have done during COVID. You have been absolutely amazing as a service, and you have battled in absolutely appalling conditions, really, with a government that's been against you every step of the way, hasn't listened to you, hasn't provided you with the equipment, the safety, the protective equipment that you need, and that hasn't listened. And I think that that is key for us. The government hasn't listened to us, and nor has it listened to you. And hearing from that colleague in Northern Ireland was very important, because it's very clear that we are not people who are just carrying on and pretending that we don't know what is going on in our services. We are people that are trying very hard to talk to governments, to explain to governments the difficulties we are facing, but they are choosing to ignore that. And whilst our government is saying there isn't money, as Zarah said right at the very start, there is plenty of money when the government wants to invest in services, and the government could choose to change what they are doing. What I would say to all of you, and I think this is really important, is that I've campaigned around the NHS for the whole of my trade union career, because I came in to being a trade unionist actually through nursing. And whenever I've gone out campaigning around the NHS, the public are absolutely behind you. So what I don't want anyone on this call is to fear that they won't have the support of the public, because the public is absolutely behind those that work in the NHS. And I've seen it every time I've been out campaigning. When I've been out, I remember once stood in the middle of Mansfield with a clipboard trying to get signatures for some petition for the NHS and shouting something. And this person walked past me. And then when I said something about the NHS, they did a U-turn and walked back to me and said, if it's for the NHS, I support it. And you don't get that with many campaigns. I do a lot of campaigning. So I think it's important for you to know that the NHS has the backing of the public. I genuinely believe that they do. And I think your colleagues have worked extremely hard during the pandemic. I would say from my perspective, our union has fought hard during this pandemic to hold the government to account. You know, we have put ourselves out there on the line, but we have looked all the time at the evidence. And some of the evidence that we've looked at is the impact that the pandemic was having in the NHS and those rising case numbers. So when we took that sort of very decisive action in January of this year, yes, it was about safety for our members and looking at that, but it was about safety for our children and young people. It was about safety for our communities, but it was also about protecting our NHS, because we knew that the capacity was at stretching point at that point. Reopening schools in January would have been a very bad decision, yet this government decided that that was what they wanted to do. But actually, because of the action we took, we stopped that happening. And I think we did a lot to protect not only the NHS, but communities and people, and save lives by taking that action. And we got condemned by the government, but we would take that action again. And sometimes it is hard doing things and speaking out and standing up for things, but it is really important. But the other thing that I will say to you is that we have, as a union, committed to support our health workers. On the 12th of May, it was International Nurses Day. We did a huge campaign around that with our activists. We are the biggest education union in Europe. We have over 450,000 members. They got behind that action. They got behind online tweeting out, supporting our NHS staff. They did selfies, they did photos in schools, they talked about it in schools. Whatever you choose to do, we as a union will, I give you my word, work with you. We want to support our NHS workers. You absolutely deserve this pay rise, not because you deserve a pay rise, you obviously do, but all of the things that we have heard tonight about protecting our patients, protecting our staff members, saving. We are losing people from the NHS who are highly qualified and trained because of the stress they're put under, and they could be saved if we invested in it and supported them. And it's really important that we back you, and we know the NHS workers will back us. We have to stand together across the public sector and support each other, and that is what we will do. That's the commitment that I give to you in supporting that. And the final thing I'll say, because I know we are getting towards the end of this and there may be big questions that you want to take. The final thing I will say is this: actually, some of those, certainly the films from the student nurses, brought me to tears actually, and a couple of the testimonies early on. But somebody said to me a long time ago, we don't need tears. Tears, thank you for your tears and being upset for us, but we don't need tears. We need you to be our voice. Well, we need to be the voice of our nurses. We need to be out on the streets, speaking out for you, standing alongside you, supporting you and fighting with you. And that is what I commit to do. And that's what I will take back to my union and ask that they do. And together, we need to fight for the pay rise that you deserve, that you absolutely deserve and have every right to, but we have to also fight for those pay conditions and staffing levels that keep everybody safe. So solidarity to you. Thank you for inviting me. It's been very powerful, and I really thank you for letting me come along.
Thank you, Louise, for that, and it's thank you for coming along. I really appreciate you joining us here tonight, and it's really great again to hear your experience, and thank you for your solidarity in return. So thank you so much. So our final speaker of the night, last but certainly not least, is Mr. Graham Reavy. He's the chair of the Trade Union Committee, and I thought it'd be really good for Graham to come and speak last, just to try and help round off the event and to talk about what the next steps would be once we get past this consultative ballot, which I'll remind you commences on the 12th of August. So Thursday, not far away, runs for a month. So please do make sure that you have your voice heard. So Graham, I'll hand over to you, if that's okay.
Lovely, thank you very much, Mel. Listen, what a fantastic event tonight's been. An emotional roller coaster, I think it was referred to earlier by yourself. My goodness, I've listened to Matt, I've listened to Fiona, I've listened to the other Matt, Cecil and those student nurses. How dare this government extinguish the flame of hope? How dare they? And that's what they seem intent on doing. That's what they are intent on doing. But let's get on to the subject that I have to cover before I actually move on to anything else and take some questions, because actually we are starting our ballot on the 12th of August. It's a ballot that we're running by an independent scrutineer, because one of the things that we were very conscious of in the Trade Union Committee is we wanted as much as possible to create a transparency across the RCN, to actually use independent scrutineers wherever possible on any of the ballots that we were using, especially in the larger balloting areas. The ballot's on the 12th. We expect the results back in round. We'll close on the 13th, and at that point in time, we will share the results with the Trade Union Committee. And the Trade Union Committee will deliberate on what that result looks like. And can I just say, members, this is when we really need your commitment. This is up to you. My own preference is that basically, and I think I've been very, very clear, and everything I've said is that I think this is an appalling offer. I think it's absolutely disgusting, despicable. But I need to hear your voice, no matter what way you go. and no matter what way you intend to vote. Often we rely very much on what social media tells us, but I looked at social media. There's about 28,000 odd members in the different nursing forums on social media that I'm involved in. I don't have the reach in social media. There's probably 220,000 NHS nurses that are involved across England and Wales. I'm discounting Northern Ireland. Fiona will know why, because basically we've still not got a real decision in Northern Ireland around that. But as soon as we do, we'll be doing exactly the same in Northern Ireland. So I need people to let me know the strength of feeling. And that's the reason for a consultative ballot. A consultative ballot is not to tell us and to tell us tell the Royal College of Nursing, the people who will organise your industrial action should it ever come to that. It's to tell us what your strength of feeling is. And that's why the questions that you will be asked is quite a simple question. Do you accept this offer or do you reject it? It's not asking you what you intend to do going further down the line, because we'll come back and we'll ask you that. We want to know, first and foremost, what's the strength of feeling that you have about this offer? There's a lot of things that have been promoted and a lot of media speculation, a lot of myths that have been said around actually how much this will cost the government and things like that. But our intention is to hear what it means to you. The cost is a myth. We had London Economics done some modelling for us, and the modelling was based on a 10% pay rise, and that said that the government would recoup 80% through taxation, national insurance and indirect taxation, like the VAT you pay in shops, like the local input, the local economic input that people would actually, by spending their money in local shops in different areas, they would have that payback. So don't listen to the myths. Make your vote based on, do you think you are valued? Do you think this government values you? Do you think 3% is a value that actually buys you, probably for a newly qualified nurse, buys you probably fish and chips and a cup of tea a week? Frankly, that's what they're talking about, fish and chips and a cup of tea for the work that you put in. That's what this government think of you. So I'm asking you to use your vote. I'm asking you to consider how you vote. But most of all, I'm asking you to tell me. I'm asking you to tell me. I can't do anything without a member voice behind me. I made a commitment when I took the chair of the Trade Union Committee on that I would make sure that the Royal College of Nursing put all of the decision making back in the hands of members, and members would be leading the organisation going forward. Mel and Fiona are part of the RCN's ruling council. I'm part of the Trade Union Committee, and we stand together to ensure that not only is that message delivered to you, but it's shown in action as well as in words. So members, it's over to you now. It's over to you. Make your vote count. Be heard. But looking at the amount of people that are attending tonight and online, I'm needing to go, for you to go out and for you to hold the hand of 50 odd members yourself and actually speak to people in your canteen and your workplaces and actually make sure that they're doing exactly the same thing. Because reaching the people on social media is not an issue. We can do that very, very easily. But we need to reach every individual in every ward, every department, every community function, all over this country, wherever nurses are working within the NHS. We need you to have your say. So please join me in this campaign. Get active. It was, I think it was Matt saying it's the most wonderful thing and most wonderful feeling that you can get. But actually, we all care about our patients. It's time that we all started to care about each other. And most importantly, the government, who have a duty and a responsibility to care for this nation, they should start to act a little bit more grown up in that space. Thank you very much, Mel. I'm going to stop so we've got some time for questions.
Amazing, Graham. Thank you so much. And your enthusiasm is the best way to finish what really has been a fantastic panel tonight. And I just want to take a couple of seconds to thank each and every single one of you who's spoken tonight. It's been, I absolutely did call it an emotional roller coaster, because that is exactly what it is. But it just shows you that we, as members in different capacities, but as members, we are so passionate about this campaign. We know what it means for us and for our patients, and that's why we're here fighting for it. And I'm hoping that that's what this event has helped some of the viewers attending tonight, to help instill that passion and that drive and that enthusiasm towards this campaign. And I'm hoping that it inspires some of you to either remain active, continue to be active if you already are, which is fantastic, or to become active, become that next active member, using that enthusiasm and that passion and drive that you have for your patients to help fight fair pay for nurses. So thank you so much to all the speakers tonight. And you're absolutely right, Graham, we're actually going to go into a little Q&A now. We've had some fantastic questions come in. I'm just reading through some of them now, and they really are fantastic questions. So what I'm going to do is I'll just read out some of the questions. Some of them are relevant and they relate to each other, so I'll tie a couple of them together and then I'll direct them to the panel, if that's okay. Actually, the first question I'm going to start with is it's a pretty simple question. What is the difference between industrial action and strike action? And another person joining us tonight also said, can you clarify the difference between a protest and industrial action? As many are told that if it gets to the point following the consultation, individuals who participate in industrial action could be charged, and therefore this has an impact on their PIN. I was just wondering, Louise, are you happy to answer that question, please?
Yeah, of course I am. I'm more than happy to answer that. I mean, you're currently in the process of having an indicative ballot just to gauge members' interest, and that is perfectly normal within the trade union movement. It's something that we often do within our trade union. I mean, there are protests, okay, so the term protest is used. We do lots of protesting, and anybody can go out and protest, and we live in a democracy here, allegedly, so we can go out and protest as much as we like about what we disagree with in terms of what the government is doing, and we are all engaged in lots of protesting around various things, but particularly around the NHS and education and certainly around pay at the moment. Once you get into a more formal ballot situation, you can, if you take the indicative ballot and people get behind that, which I really hope they do, and as I've said, you certainly have the backing, I know, of many of our members, and we will be behind you every step of the way if you do that. You then move on to a process of taking a formal ballot, and then you get into a situation of taking industrial action, and that can take different forms. One of the forms of that could be to take strike action, where you actually remove your work. You say, I'm not working, we're on strike. The union would decide your strike days, and you would not then go to work on those days. In our union, we have a policy. If it's national strike action, we don't remunerate members, but we do have a hardship fund that members can apply to who lose pay through strike action, through industrial action. And if your union doesn't have that, then I know that our union would definitely look at funding and giving money to you to try and support that sort of action, because loss of pay is one thing that is really difficult during strike action, and we understand that. But you can also take other forms of industrial action, and we have done that many times as a union over the past decade, 20 years, 10, 20 years. So, we have had what we call action short of strike action. So refusing to do certain things. So it may be that you take action where you refuse to do overtime because, you put on the line, you're saying to the employer, enough is enough. We're putting in place some limits around what we're prepared to do, because what we are arguing, and it's sort of a negotiating battle, we are saying enough is enough. we don't want to, we don't want to do this, but we are doing this because it's about protecting people and protecting communities and fighting for what is right for our service. So I think it's really important that at the moment you understand that the ballot that you are in the process of taking part in is what's called an indicative ballot. It's not where you are committing to it. It's about your union gathering interest from you, wanting to hear your views. So it's really important that you take part in that you are clear about what you are prepared to do. But what I would say to all of you out there, and I say this exactly the same to members in my union, and I understand your union like my union, our members don't want to take action. We don't want to not do our job because we're committed to our job. We work in a caring profession, but this is a government that has attacked you continually and is not giving you what you deserve. And at times we have to take action to force them back. And I think I would urge anybody on this call to vote in that indicative ballot to take action now. And I say to you that we will support you. We will back you. I will go to my members and say to them, get behind the nurses. This is what they need. But you are in an indicative ballot situation. So it's to tell your union that you're prepared to take that action, and then there would be something called a formal ballot, and it would be after that point, and your union will talk to you because that's what unions do, and keep you updated about what is happening and what the next stage in the campaign is. But as I say, many unions have been through this. We will stand with you. We will work with you, and just please do vote in the ballot. However, whatever your view is, if you don't give your view, your union doesn't know what you're thinking. So please do make sure you vote in that indicative ballot.
Lovely. Thank you, Louise, for that response. That was absolutely fantastic, and I think it summarises really well. Graham, I'm going to come to you next, just with again a couple of questions, if that's all right. So it'd be really good if you could just clarify and reiterate the point again about what the process is, what the ballots are. Louise, I think you went through them, but again, I just really want to clarify because the RCN doesn't necessarily have the same process as other unions, and I think it's really good for the members to hear that. And there's also another question here saying, if the consultative ballot is in favour of accepting, what will this mean, and will the RCN be bound by it and accept the offer? And then I was also hoping that you would summarise what the activities are planned for the summer of action, if that's all right, please.
Thank you very much, Mel. Once again, just I want to just be clear, because a number of the trade unions are actually carrying out indicative ballots, which actually are ballots which are actually saying if you, I think the way that the a number of the unions are actually wording it is actually, if you are rejecting this offer, are you willing to take industrial action? And that is an indicative ballot, basically, because for us, that's actually looking at the outcomes and that. At the moment, the Royal College of Nursing has decided to test members' opinions only, without any view as into any future actions and what they might look like. We would intend to come back, depending on our engagement with our membership and the results that we would have from the ballot, to actually tell us exactly what the strength of feeling was within the membership. So that goes on to the second question that you gave me, Mel, which was in relation to what if our members accepted that? What if our members wrote to accept the 3%? Well, literally, I will do whatever the members, and I will lead whatever the members decide. And, and that if our members did indicate that they were going to accept the 3% offer this time round, then I would continue to battle and to fight and to campaign for, and I would perhaps take it to the space of, well, if members are not willing to commit to it this time, perhaps we can continue to campaign and actually let's get us into a more powerful position to make sure that we're able to do it next time. Because we are after all about to enter into the next round of it's just because this government and its dilly-dallying and its approach to the peer review body process this year, blaming it on COVID, which I think is entirely unacceptable, because things like this happen within the NHS and have done for many, many years. Okay, this has been a big bit of a crisis, but to actually start to use the crisis to make sure that you weren't paying nurses appropriately when their pay rise was due in April, I just think it's an abysmal situation. And actually, the people who are actually working all the way through this, alongside other public servants, including teachers, police, and all of them, have all been working all the way through COVID. So that's another element, Mel. So therefore, if the members accept this, then we would continue to campaign for what we consider fair pay for nursing. Finally, Mel, I think you asked me around the summer activities, or as I'm trying to put it, the RCN summer of discontent. You know, because I think that's it's appropriate, right? Because actually, we are not happy. We are not happy. Nursing is not happy. Nursing has been kicked in the teeth. So what's happening? Well, there's multiple events happening all around your area. This is one of them. There will be other. A lot of these events are virtual, but I've heard events like there's been silent vigils at various points. People are actually just forming how these are going to look at the moment, and we're having to do some very, very could you say lateral thinking, just to actually make sure that we can get out and speak to members. Because we're still really in a position where we cannot have boots on the ground in the face-to-face conversations that we would normally have with members if we were considering their opinions, to actually make sure that we upped the ante and got members involved and engaged. So that's why it's so important that you have these corridor conversations with people. I've heard things like and Gardens of Remembrance. I'm going to be coming around, making various trips round about England to actually see if I can rouse up some interest in the areas and speaking to you know, your branches and boards if I can, and I'm happy to take invites, and that's getting coordinated for me, and that's all going to be all the way through, right up until we get to the point of the closing of the ballot. And I'll be coordinating that activity with your steward representatives and to the stewards committee, your TUC representatives, and the chairs of the regional boards. Sorry, I was going to say branches there, but I knew that wasn't the right word. So there'll be a lot of activities. Contact your region and see if you've got an idea. Don't think it's a stupid idea. Float it. Float it. If it's not practical, we won't be able to do it, and we'll tell you why. But float it. Run it by your region. We're not, you know, we're not the people who have the panacea of ideas here. We need you. We need it to belong to you. Your campaign, your pay rise, your activity, and your involvement and engagement. So thanks, Mel.
No problem. Thanks, Graham, for that. Really appreciate it. Wonderful. So we have actually had a load of questions come in tonight, and I'm mindful of time, so I'll only do a couple more. I've seen some great comments as well saying, you know, hi, I'll be rejecting the offer and I'm very keen for strike. It's great to hear your enthusiasm. Fantastic. Share that and spread that wide. I'm doing this to everyone wearing uniform, got my campaign materials and going to leaflet all the wards. That's a really good way to do that. Obviously, do it safely, but that is the best way to get out there. Get out there face to face, and that's something that the RCN are looking to do going forwards. Obviously, we need to be mindful of safety. We're aware of what's going on in hospital trusts and such at the moment, but if we can, we will be out there, and I personally will be out there in my region in East Midlands, getting out there to the trust and trying to be as visible as possible. So one of the next questions, I think this is a really important question. Everyone keeps saying this campaign's about our patient safety. Can you tell us how? And you know, I have said that quite a lot tonight. And I was just wondering, Cecil, do you think you could answer that one for us?
I'll try to. I'll do my best. I think it's so important because I ended my speech for say with the point that ultimately it's about patient safety. In my opinion, like, if we don't get the training, we don't get the time with our nurses who are already overworking, that's just another stress, you know, like for them to have to train us. Because if you're not getting the proper training, we're putting our patients at risk. If you're doing I'll just give a basic example. The fact that nurses now have to wear an apron sort of thing saying "do not disturb" during medication rounds. What does that say? You know, that's just one small example of saying that nurses were getting disturbed so much so that they were doing drug calculation mistakes, resulting in patient safety being compromised. That's just one example. So if we look at it in a bigger picture, that's saying as future nurses, as student nurses, we are not getting the proper training, the right training, and ultimately it's going to result in more mistakes happening, which means that our patients are being put at risk all the time. There's not enough like patient to staff ratios, which is even worse because I've had to be counted in the numbers so many times, and it's just not acceptable because I don't get paid for it. I mean, that's not even the question right now. That's fund our future later. But you know, when we have to go through all of it, sometimes it's just not enough. Like I have to do 60+ hours just so that I can support myself. So I only imagine how overtime results for like the nurses who are doing 12 hours. And if you're doing more than 60 hours, what is it? What's happening? You know, if you have to do 2 jobs, are you okay? That's the main question. I can no longer ask someone, just go and ask, are you okay? Because that's just such a silly question in a healthcare environment. But like, I find it so annoying that I can't just go up to someone and say, are you okay? Because I know they will say I'm fine, but truly, are we all fine? I hope that kind of answered it, but like keep going back to that one point I made about why do we even have to have nurses wear the apron "do not disturb." Just keep going back to that all the time.
Yeah, thank you, Cecil. Actually, do you know what? That's a cracking example, not one that I'd even really thought about. And it's those little examples that really show you the fine changes. And it sounds like fine changes. It's one little change, but it's those one little changes that are with the focus of patient safety. And if there isn't enough of us, which already there isn't enough of us, nurses, let alone all NHS workers. You know, we have over 40,000 nursing vacancies alone within the NHS, and we're hemorrhaging staff. And part of that reason is because we are not paying our staff the pay that they deserve, and that's this government's problem, and that's why we need to keep bringing it back to them. So this isn't about pennies in our pocket. Yeah, don't get me wrong, that might be nice, but actually my main focus here is my patient safety, and that's what you're absolutely right, Cecil. That's what we're going to keep drawing home. I'm just going to do one last question tonight, I think, and I'm just sort of looking up and down. And like I say, thank you to everyone who's been viewing this and who has been involved and asking those questions. Any questions that we haven't answered tonight, please do bring them back to your regional offices, bring them back to your council member, your reps, your board members. Anybody who you can discuss these with, we can answer them for you. Come to me directly, any of the panel of speakers tonight. We are more than happy to answer your questions, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to ask one more. So I think this is a good question, and you know, it kind of ties in with the whole staff burnout. How can I get my workmates involved? They wouldn't sign a petition, let alone get active in the RCN. And there was also another question saying lots of colleagues saying the RCN is not visible enough. Matt, can I hand that one over to you to answer that? What can we do to get more people involved, more people active? And what do you want us, the RCN, to do to be more visible to those members so we can help them be active?
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, and thank you for the question. My initial response to hearing that question is what can you do to ensure that we are visible? Are you able to think creatively? Like you said, go to regional offices, attend branch meetings, speak to local the council members for your region, approach them with ideas. You know, a year ago, I wasn't particularly active within the RCN, and ever since I have been active, I've always found that there is a culture of being quite transparent and having ideas. Like Graham said, suggest ideas. And if we're unable to do it, I've been told, look, that's not particularly feasible right now, usually because of the COVID restrictions. But for me, you know, be quite creative. I have ordered a lot of RCN sort of materials which you can order online, and those can also be put up in workplaces. And there's this beautiful T-shirt that I am modelling right now is one of them. You know, these are the things that start conversations. You know, having persuasive conversations. In terms of getting colleagues active, I think framing questions. How do you ask particular questions? Having those persuasive conversations to people, identifying what's important to them. For example, if we say, you know, would you take industrial action? It's particularly if staff or members don't have the knowledge to understand what that actually means, it's quite frightening. You know, potentially you think, oh, patients will be put at risk. But how about we suggest, you know, would you take the appropriate action to ensure patient safety? And that patient safety is what will you know, resonate with them, and they will say, actually, do you know what, I will, if it's patient safety, I will fight for them. And that's when you can bring in the conversations. Well, we've got these actions, and Graham mentioned the summer of action. So although, you know, some people believe the RCN aren't active, do familiarise yourself with the information that's been released, and if there's no actions local to your area, approach your local, you know, local branch, your office, and your chair, you know, branch chairs, and make suggestions about what we can do. I'm going to leave it there, Mel. I've got a roast dinner on the cook, you see, and my wife has just given me evil eyes because it's 20 minutes overdue, and she's due to give birth in 3 weeks, so I best not upset a pregnant lady. So I'm going to make a move if that's all right. Lovely to see you all, and no doubt we'll speak soon.
Lovely, thank you so much for that, Matt. No, absolutely not. Do not leave her waiting. You answer her call, bless her. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it's those important messages, those important conversations that we can keep having, and like you say, quality of those conversations, really pushing home that point of being active, answering any concerns, answering any, you know, worries that people have, because this is going to be a hard process. We can't lie. This is going to be tough. This is going to challenge each and every single one of us. But when I speak for myself, I'm ready for that challenge. I'm ready to stand up, and I'm ready to put my foot down and tell this government that I am fed up with them not listening to us when we say that this is not good enough. So that's the end of our event, and you know what, I think it's been really, really amazing. Thank you to everybody who has spoken tonight. Really appreciate your time. Thank you to everybody who has attended and viewed this. This is recorded, so you can watch it back. Please view it. Please share it with your colleagues far and wide. The further this message gets out, the better. We've had some fantastic experience here tonight, so let's share that experience. And just as a reminder, you've got the consultative ballot that starts on Thursday, 9 AM on the 12th of August. Please make sure your details are up to date. As my T-shirt says, please make sure your details are up to date. Get your colleagues to make sure that their details are up to date so that they can have that voice in this ballot. And I just also really want to remind you that Council earlier this year announced that £35 million strike benefit fund to cover the eventuality of strike action and any loss of earnings and anything that financially we need to be able to support you, the membership, to take action if you demand it. So thank you so much for joining us. Remember, you are the voice of this union. Without you, we cannot do this. I implore you to be involved, and I really hope that we can work through this together, because together we will win. Thank you.